Nobody, anybody on this earth who thinks he can stop me telling the truth as I see it needs to go and have his or her head examined.
So, Paul, that rather than attacking the points that you raised, they attacked your person. And so for me, my question would be, how did you feel looking at that, and how would you explain the obedient movement, or how can we come back from that in my
Well, again, it has to do with education. I must tell you, by the way, that I didn't read all this, but of course, certain links were sent to me, especially when factual errors would be the wrong, when facts were being manufactured, quote unquote, being manufactured. I read these things, I was disgusted. There's no other word for it. I really was disgusted. And I know that it was, I realized, of course, it was orchestrated. Internet has become so promiscuous, and even venal. I know that there's a relay, I use the word relay mechanism, which is triggered into action by those who control what we call the trolls of the internet. And so my disgust and contempt, I just went about my business, because nobody, anybody on this earth who thinks he can stop me telling the truth as I see it needs to go and have his or her head examined. It's as elementary as that. But it was depressing to see those who wanted to be political leaders encouraging that kind of action, that kind of attitude in the youth. And my mind went to the expression, they don't know what they're doing. Those who sow the wind will reap the whirlwind. These very trolls, these foot soldiers whom they think, these myrmidons of hate, whom they've trained in that aspect. One of these days, they'll be astonished, they will turn on them and teach them a lesson. And so my attitude was very blasé, to remain blasé about the whole thing. But it is, for me, a sad phenomenon, especially for those who want to lead a multi-textured society, different religions, different ethnic groups, different worldviews, who actually want to preside over such group, as one. It means that they've already declared themselves incompetent to lead such an entity. Yeah. That's all.
What do you think of the person, Mr. Peter Obi? What do you think? How do you think he can make it right? What mistakes do you think he made, and do you think he has a chance in the next election?
Well, I hope for the sake of the nation that he doesn't express interest in the next election. Because for me as a leader, if there was any proof that he was unfit to lead that country, it's in the conduct which he encouraged among his followers. Because I know for a fact, and I can give you an instance which proves that he was in control of those forces.
Can you please, what's the instance, Prof?
Well, simply because when he first came to visit me, he did come at one time.
That's correct.
Somebody brought him. And I watched him. I watched his action, his body language. It seemed to be very conciliatory. But I remember the moment when he took out his computers, something, and after he made a statement like, "Oh, don't worry, everything, will be taken care of. You don't have anything to worry about these people." He was talking about the quote-unquote obedience. I remember he took out his computer, his phone, and he tapped, a message, there. And it shot me. I was watching him very closely. I didn't say a thing. And after that, everything seemed to be, to be nice and cozy.
So he really, yes.
And I saw and I read his statement about that meeting afterwards. The statement was a contrast to what actually happened, what we discussed. And I mentioned it in my response when somebody said, I can't remember what he wrote, but anyway, it was a misrepresentation of what happened. And I made sure that I put a statement out saying, no, I'm sorry, this is not what was said. This language never came into it. On the contrary, this is what happened. And so when I meet somebody who is incapable, even at a meeting which is supposed to be conciliatory, of being completely honest, I look at that person, and so I smiled myself. And of course, when I got to Stellenbosch and I was asked a question about this, I repeated exactly what had given, quote-unquote, given offense. Only this time I made it even stronger. I said, Peter Obi did not win this thing. So I led them again to go on the rampage, that's there, and I went about my own business. So there were witnesses at the meeting. You don't take my word. Don't take my word for it. There were witnesses at the meeting.
Yes.
He came with 2 people, and 1 person was, and I said, ask them. The statement he put out was not a reflection of what went on at our meeting, at that meeting, which I very reluctantly considered. It was pressure for me not even to allow him into my house. I said, why not? Let him come and say what he wants to say. I want to see him face to face, study him, leave him an opening, and then act on them. So that's it. I wasn't going to go into this, but since I see that you're curious, I have to tell you.
No, I'm sorry. I just find it, thank you for doing that, Prof. I just find it a bit sad because for someone of your stature, like I said earlier, you won the Nobel Prize for Literature. You're someone that's millions of, not just Nigerians, but millions of people all over the world, mostly young people like myself, we hold in high regard. And I was so disappointed when the backlash came, because for me, I see you as someone who is intellectually honest. You've been in the struggle. You were an activist when you were a student. You've gone to jail before. You've been in solitary confinement, and everything you've done for Nigeria and for the world at large. To find young people like myself degrade your person, I didn't know what to say, but I was like, this is not just how to do it. You cannot bring someone like Professor Wole Soyinka down. Like, there are people that you shouldn't even touch, or you shouldn't even like degrade their person. And so for me personally, I just found it, and like you rightly said, that kind of behavior will not win you an election in Nigeria. Nigeria is so diverse and so multicultural that you cannot win an election with the obedient movement's behavior. It's not possible. But